gotta tell you about one of my favorite bands back in the 80s. It was Sudden Impulse. They were one of the most influential bands that I have ever come across. So after years of making documentaries, filming small B-rate porno movies, and, you know, writing for other small periodicals, small, maybe large periodicals, I decided to hunt down Sudden Impulse and find out where are they now. Sudden Impulse, for those of you that may remember, was Will McNair, Scott Murray, John Salvatore Conti, and Tom McNally. I'm here at the home of Will McNair after I found him, and I'm going to get a lead on the other members of Sudden Impulse, and we'll talk with them too. Why don't you come with me and see what Will's up to these days. So, Mr. Scott Murray tells me that you... Ooh, now that was an ominous, huh? Mr. Murray tells me that you are the Nigel to his St. Hubbins.
He caused a lot of fucking friction.
A lot of fucking friction?
Yeah.
You mean you're not the St. Hubbins?
He thought he was really the leader of the band.
Oh, but he wasn't the leader of the band?
Well, it was really more of a group effort. And John, Tom, and I used to talk about it a lot.
Really?
We talked about getting another front.
Another frontman?
Yeah.
Who would have been your frontman?
We thought about going like as a jazz combo and having Rob Sheaf lead it off.
Rob,
Yeah.
Fantastic. Rob,
He was our occasional saxophonist, and we thought about going another route.
I remember the saxophonist.
Yes.
That's right. Something about his nose or something.
Yeah, he had a nose and a little bit of hair.
Well,
thing.
don't we all? Oh, the
we
hair
all
top.
did. We all
The hair
did
top.
then, back then.
Fantastic.
But yeah, all of us really wanted Scott out of the band.
Really?
His ego really took away from some of the musicality that we were doing.
This is good stuff. See, I thought Sudden Impulse was a utopia until I spoke by phone with Mr. Scott Murray, who happens to say that at one time at the talent show, you may have tried to upstage him with a little "Feels Like Making Love." Is that when the riff started to grow?
May have been when I sang that song. The girls in the audience thought I was singing the band.
Well, thought you felt like making love,
And
of
he
course.
had, he sang like dumb Billy Joel songs.
Oh, dumb Billy Joel
Yeah,
song.
so-
I like Billy Joel.
Well,
He's no Sudden Impulse.
No,
But
he couldn't be.
who is?
So, how did you handle the rigorous schedule and the sudden success that the Impulse thrust upon you?
Of course, it was glorious at first, just like every other success that you've heard in rock and roll history. The fame, the accolades, the applause, in the beginning's fantastic. And then you start hearing things like, oh, Scott thinks he's in charge of the band. Oh, Scott thinks this is his band. Oh, everyone thinks that Scott is the only thing that matters in this band. And all of a sudden my friends that we put our blood and guts into this together. We've been in like brothers. And now they're looking at me like I'm trying to take some of the glory away. And I never had any choice in that. If people commented on me, I'm not trying to say one thing or another, but I don't know, maybe there was a reason.
So, when do you think the personalities started to clash within the band? Was it success-driven, or were the personalities destined to clash, success or not?
Yeah, it was just plain and simple. It was just jealousy.
I just spoke with Mr. Will McNair, one of your band members from Sudden Impulse.
Yes.
And, I'm just going to cut to the chase and ask you a tough, emotional question. Will McNair currently, he's no longer in the music industry. He is now an assistant manager at an adult novelty shop in Beamer, Nebraska. How does this hit you?
Doesn't surprise me. Let's just put it that way. He never really had the drive that I did. Being in the band, it was all great, it was wonderful, but I had bigger ambitions.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, what you see here, how did I make this fortune?
Oh, I don't know. You are,
Well,
without a doubt, the most successful member of Sudden Impulse.
yes, well, as you may know, I played the bass guitar for Sudden Impulse.
Absolutely.
I was known for some pretty killer bass riffs. Well, really, I expanded that bass playing, and I got into the music movie soundtrack business. Essentially, let's put this. I write bass licks for XXX rated movies.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah. Can I play you a sample?
Yo, please,
Okay.
please.
This is just something I I concocted. It might be kind of hard to hear, but
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's get on in
Yeah,
here.
let's turn this up here.
yeah, you hear that bass? Yeah. See, I wrote that bass lick right there. See? Yeah. You hear that jam?
I do.
Yeah, I wrote that. I wrote that bass lick.
This is actually
So-
one of my favorite movies.
Yeah. Yeah, Anal Come Slut Wives. This is part 3.
I aspire to make a film
So-
as good as Anal.
So this is, so that gives you an example of how I made my living.
I was lucky enough to run into Mr. Tom McNally, the drum player from Sudden Impulse. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, thank you.
I'm here to ask you a few questions. And first, I'd like to lead in with, were you a little intimidated by being the only non-French horn member of the band?
French horn player by the band. You think I'd be intimidated? So I was the drummer. It's probably not a surprise to folks that the French horn is a pretty gay instrument. So the fact that I was playing with a few French horn players was more embarrassing than anything else. I mean, drums were where the cool kids played. French horn was where the awkward or tubby kids played.
I'm here in Hyde Park, Vermont, and I was lucky enough to run into David Manning, the infamous roadie from Sudden Impulse. I'm here to ask him a few questions, since he doesn't mind. We're going to start in with, how were you lucky enough to run into the SI boys?
Well, it all started back in 9th grade. We were all band geeks together in the marching band, and
And what were you? I know the guys all played French horn, and then McNally played the skins, but
I was trombone player,
trombone,
phone player.
sliding the horn.
That's right. That's right.
So the name Sudden Impulse, wouldn't you think that's a little redundant?
So it's not the most interesting story, but I think we all thought our name was fairly average. It's actually a name I came up with, but I think through physics class or something stupid like that. And
You were
then-
studying other kinds of impulses?
Yes, exactly. And we voted on a bunch of different names. I think Will's favorite was the Ku Klux Flintstones. I'm sure Scott wanted something that had to do with Billy Joel, and I think we voted, and Sudden Impulse got like the most 4th place votes, which was enough to win. So we were all kind of saying like, "Oh, good, Sudden Impulse," but it stuck. Wasn't very good. That's a true story.
Well, let me tell you something about Scott Murray. Scott had a large head, because he was the lead singer of our band. I think he kind of took that a little too much to heart. I mean, it got to the point people would call it Scott Murray's band. It was never Sudden Impulse. It was Scott Murray's band is playing at the gazebo tonight. Scott Murray's band is playing at the dance tonight. So I think when I would step forward onto a microphone like that, I think he was scared. He was scared. He was scared of someone else stepping in and taking the reins. It wasn't intentional. Absolutely not. He's a great musician. He was always a great musician. He still is a great musician. That's pretty much all I have to say about that.
So with the success, there were obviously groupies. Were there any ever hostile groupies? Were there any stories that will stick out in your mind? Any times you were ever terrified or inspired by the fans who adored you?
Wow. I mean, that kind of stuff usually stays a little tight-lipped between the guys, and don't really want to air up dirty laundry because you're going to get someone in trouble, but, hell with it. It's been a while, right? I have to say we had this girl, Corey, and her friend, and they kind of latched onto us. This girl, Corey Cerzo, she kind of dated a guy that kind of helped us out with some moving some gear from time to time, Chris Peters. And they were so enthralled with the band that they named me Sudden and Will Impulse. And when we'd see them in the halls in high school, they would yell, "Hey Sudden, hey Impulse," every day, over and over, to the point where you start to get a little nervous, and you appreciate the fans, because without the fans, who's listening, right? But, sometimes it gets a little hairy out there and you just kind of got to watch your back.
Is there anything else you would like to add about your time in Sudden Impulse, Mr. Conti?
So, the time was great. Those were great times. We did a lot of wondrous things. We rocked Wilton, Connecticut. The bonfire. Remember the bonfire gig? Man, that was the greatest.
You still hear people talk about that today.
Still people talking about the bonfire gig today. So it was a great time. But look at me now.
Times I'll never forget.
Yeah, but look at me now.
But look at you now.
As much as I know these guys over the years have been bitter at me for thinking that I needed all the glory and all the fame, my best moment for the Sudden Impulse was at the gazebo.
At what age do you believe your son started to develop unusual musical traits or habits? Did it start with the potty training?
No, much later. I would say around 7 years old. He developed a musical talent where he would put his hand under his arm pit like this.
I see.
And he would play all sorts of tunes. And we felt that musical talent like that really just doesn't come that easily. It had to be, here again, something very, very special.
Scott, have you ever had a venereal disease?
I really haven't told too many people this, but I had 2, and I think they were both from the same girl. Over a span of 5 or 6 years, I think.
And your groupie, Dave Manning, did he ever have a venereal disease?
As a matter of fact, yes. I think it involved bumps on his genitalia.
Mm.
And or warts, which I might have had as well, possibly from the same girl.
I see. Well, there you have it, Michelle.
You heard it here first. It's probably true. I don't know.
So, after sliding the trombones around, how did you get into sliding the amps in and out and running with the rest of the guys' equipment?
Well, I got into being the roadie because I really couldn't play any of the instruments that you need to play in a rock band. And I had the biggest car, so I could fit a lot of stuff in my car. I could put Scott's Korg in my back seat was mostly what I ended up doing. And unlike those guys who needed to be in a band to get laid, I got laid all by myself all the time, so it really wasn't an issue, so I didn't need to be in a band.
It's hard to talk about, actually, because, I started off being, very close friends with both of them. And, as their manager, you try to be fair to both of them. But then you just, you see 2 people that just destroy each other. The egos take over, and it's just not, the stage isn't big enough for both of them, and that's basically what happened. But John is just a superior performer and a superior talent, and I just don't think Scott could ever deal with that, and it was just right now it's actually hurting me to talk about this a little bit.
So would you say that John has more sudden impulses than Scott does?
They both have sudden impulses, but the impulses, I think, go way beyond the music. And, there's some impulses that they had that probably, weren't stuff that we would want to talk about on video. But But the real problem and the real breakdown was, the ego and the way they tore each other apart. It was very sad.
Was it a woman that tore them apart?
Actually, it was John's cock that tore Scott's asshole apart.
Really? Really? Now, see, I always heard the rumors that McNally had big fat cock.
McNally had a fat cock, but John was violent.
So, how did you handle the rigorous schedule and success that Sudden Impulse thrust upon you?
So, Colin, I'm not sure who you've been talking to, but while there's a lot of hype out there, this band was pretty lame. We played maybe 5 or 6 times. No one really liked us. They liked chanting Scott's name a lot, but I look at this band as kind of a fun high school prank in some ways, and while I know the other guys look at this as their time in the limelight, my success came mostly after this band, and to me it was fun. There was a lot of laughs, but there wasn't a whole lot of success. And if you're hearing that from the other guys, then they're hanging on a few old fun times, but nothing that big.
Well, I believe it would be the fans that really dictate the success of a band, and I'm sure, myself, personally, I'm a little offended by that. SI is one of my favorite bands, and I'm sure Martin Bush would be traumatized to hear that, but, if that's your take on it, I guess.
Do you know one original song that Sudden Impulse did, Colin?
Well, original is really not the issue. It's great performances of classic, historic songs. Come on, Hooters.
The Hooters. The first song we ever did live was some Hooters B-side that 5 people had heard of before. That
6.
That gets into other issues about song selection. That's a totally different video. But when it comes down to it, we were a nickel and dime band that begged for fans. It wasn't much more than that.
Don't you agree with this? You really have to sit back and think about what is sudden impulse. It's an impulse. It's an impulse. It's an impulse.
It's sudden.
And it's a sudden impulse. So it's not like it's just an impulse that comes at you really fast, like it's a real fast impulse. So just like we came at you playing our riffs and jamming our tunes, we were sudden and we were impulsive. If you think of it from that light,
Very good way to
if you
describe
think about it from that
Those
light,
words.
the name just made all the sense in the world when we came up with it.
If I might,
You may.
let me answer your question with a question. What isn't a sudden impulse? And what do we not feel as a sudden impulse in each of us?
And there you have it. What is sudden impulse in all of us?
That's beautiful.
As we all now know, the boys were well behaved, so it must have been a shocker to you, as it was the rest of the world, when the 4 boys were found in a bowl of Jell-O with 4 Indonesian hookers. I can't imagine you believe those stories as
No,
we did.
Oh,
no, not those boys.
Not my son, John.
Definitely
not
a
that-
setup, as we all thought, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for joining me. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Conti.
You're
Appreciate your
welcome.
time
Very welcome.
for setting the
Anytime.
record straight.
I'm working for a living. I'm not complaining 'cause I really need to work. Cleaning up my body, got me feeling like a jerk. Running out of time, no, you hold your breath. Can't take a bite, but it's already once again, because I'm working for a living.